Day of the month of Elul, and we have the schus of learning the second parak of Maseches Pesachim. We are up to Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis. The Gemara had left off at the bottom of Chav Aleph Amud Beis, Chav Aleph Chav Beis Amud Aleph. Sorry. With the machlokas between Rabbi Abahu and Chizkiah, with regards to whether or not everything that is Asur B'Achila is also Asur B'Hana, and the Gemara had challenged Rabbi Abahu from the pasuk that compares dam to mayim, telling us that according to Rabbi Abahu, Kamayim is teaching you that dam, though it is normatively an Isra Achila, and therefore it should also have an Isra Hana, it is compared to mayim, and just like water is not Asur B'Hana, dam is not going to be Asur B'Hana. And the Gemara then challenges on the top of Chav Beis, Amud Beis, Ula Chizkiah. What about Chizkiah? Chizkiah, who holds that all the Isurim in the Torah that are in Isra Achila are not in Isra Hana, so Lemay Hilchasa. For what purpose do you have Itkish Dam Lamayim? Does the Torah compare Dam to Mayim? He doesn't need that to teach you the din of Rabbi Abahu, that Allah Kamayim tells you that Dam, though it is in Isra Achila, is mutar b'hana. So what exactly is the connection between dam and mayim? According to Chizkiah, that's not going to be teaching you a heter for hana that is true already. Says the Gemara, Lichter Rabbi Chia bar Abba, this goes in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Chia bar Abba. The Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Minayin ledam kodshim she'enai machshir. How do you know that the blood of kodshim are not going to be an appropriate machshir for something, for a food to be mekabel tumah? If I have an apple picked off a tree, I need to wash it, I need to wet it in order for it to be mekabel tumah. Dam kodshim is not going to be able to do that. Says the pasuk, quoting from Rabbi Yochanan, Shneimar lo sechlanu, that blood you are not allowed to eat. Al arstish b'chana kamayim, it has to be spilt out onto the ground. Dam shenishbach kamayim machshir, blood that is spilled out like water, that is an appropriate machshir. She'ena nishbach kamayim, that which is not spilled out like water, and a machshir, it is not an appropriate machshir for something to be mekabel tumah. And therefore, according to Chizkiah, alaris tishbechana kamayim doesn't teach you a din of heter hana. It teaches you that it is impossible to use this blood that is not allowed to be poured out into the ground. It has to be thrown onto the mizbech. It has to have zrikas adam onto the mizbech. That is not going to be a machshir. Okay, the Gemara now challenges Rabbi Abahu's opinion once again from the din of Ever Menachai, tearing a limb from a live animal, which is in Issa D'Oraisa. It is also one of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Says the Gemara, V'harei Ever Menachai, what about Ever Menachai, which a person is also to eat, and a Nachri is also also to eat? Dirshu, the pasuk says, Lo seichal hanefesh im abasa, that one is not allowed to eat the nefesh, the life, together with the meat, meaning, don't rip off a part of a live animal to eat it as meat. V'tanya, and the Brisa teaches us, Reb Nasan tells us, Minaim shelo yoshit odom kos yain nazir. How do you know that you are not allowed to give wine, a cup of wine, to a nazir, somebody that has taken upon themselves the oath of not drinking wine, cutting the hair, or coming in contact with their body? How do you know that you're not allowed to give a cup of wine to a nazir? If he says, I'm chalashing for a cup of wine, you cannot give that to him. Ve'ever menachai livnei Noach, and you are also not allowed to give ever menachai to a ben Noach. Tamalom, the pasuk tells us, ve'lifnei iver lo titen michshal. You are not allowed to to put a stumbling block in front of a blind person, and that is broadly understood to be, you are not allowed to hand a davar asur to somebody that is going to be eating that davar asur. But if this is an Isser Achila and it's also an Isser Hana, then you wouldn't be able to give it to him anyway. Meaning, the cup of wine is not an Isser Achila that you could give to the Nazir, in theory. But to give Ever Menachai to a Ben Nach, why would you not be allowed to do so? Meaning, you should not be allowed to do so because of the Isser of Hana, because you are benefiting from giving that as a gift. Why do you need the pasuk to teach that to you? That's the question. Says the Gemara, and it seems to be a dead giveaway that to give it to a dog would be mutter, meaning you could feed it to your animal. You cannot give it to a ben nach because it's lifnei iver, but you could give it to a kelav even though it's an isra achila. It seems to not be an isra hana. Says the Gemara, defending Rabbi Abahu, shani ever menachai is different. The ikish the dam, because it is compared to dam. You have to be strong. You have to be fastidious, not to eat blood. Because blood is the nefesh of the animal. Rashi points out here, because Sefer Dikra, the end of that pasuk, is telling you the Isra of Dam, the Sefer Dikra, lo yisachel nefesh. You're not allowed to eat the nefesh, meaning don't eat blood and don't eat every menachai. Those two things are in the same pasuk. Now we have to question Chizkiah. Ule Chizkiah that holds that an Isra Achila is not the same thing as an Isra Ana, they don't come together. Lemay hilchasa. Itkish every menachai ledam. So why did the Torah put every menachai and dam in the same pasuk? Why is there a connection between the two? Amlacha says Chizkiah to you, dam hu de itkish le every menachai. Blood is compared to Ever Menachai. It's not a question of Ever Menachai being compared to blood. It's the other way around. The Hekesh goes the other way around. Ever Menachai is not Dam is being compared to Ever Menachai because there's something that Ever Menachai needs to teach you about Dam. Ma Ever Menachai Aser Avdam Min Hachai Aser. Just like tearing a limb from a live animal is an Isra Achila, so too taking blood from a live animal is also an Isra Achila. Says the Gemara, hold on a second. Says that what exactly is the blood that one would take from an animal that would be an Isra Achila? Says the Gemara, Dam hakaza shanefesh yotza bay. If one were to kill an animal through bloodletting, meaning wasn't shchita, somebody were to poke a hole in an artery of an animal and draw out its blood, that blood would be an Isra Achila, not just the blood of an animal that one has shechted. That would be an Isra Achila as well. Says the Gemara, challenging Rabbi Abahu again. What about a Shar HaNiskal? A Shar HaNiskal is an animal that is put to death by the Beis Din. Sometimes an animal has to be put to death by the Beis Din. For example, if an animal killed a person, that is a Shar HaNiskal. If an animal kills a person, that animal has to be put to death. It's called a stoned ox, a Shar HaNiskal. The Rahman Amar, the Torah tells you, that there is an Isra Achila. One is not allowed to eat its flesh. V'tanya, and we learned in the Brisa, from the fact that you tell me that the animal is stoned, meaning it is killed with a manner of stoning, not through shchita, any idea shehi nevela, v'nevela asur b'achila. Well, I don't know that this is an isur nevela and that nevela is asur b'achila. Ma tamid lema lo yachal. What do you mean that one is not allowed to eat it? Obviously, you're not allowed to eat it. It's a nevela. Magid lecha akasav. The Torah is telling you she'im shachtai, that if the owner were to shecht it once, it has already been sentenced to death. Once it's sentenced to death, it's asur. It is still going to be asur, even if it was shechted appropriately. Meaning the owner went along and decided to shecht it. He says, why do I need to send it off to the Beis Din to be stoned? I am happy to shecht it myself. Lo yachel, one is not allowed to eat from that animal. So says the Gemara, okay, so what's the challenge? Ein li ela ba'achila. I only know that it's also ba'achila b'hana minayin. How do I know that it is also b'hana? Talmud Lama, the pasuk tells us, ubal hashar naki, that the owner of the ox is naki. He's innocent. What does it mean, naki, that he's innocent? My mashma, what does that mean? Shimon ben Zoma says, ka'adam sha'am l'chaveri yatsa plani naki min hachasav. That so-and-so left cleaned out from all of his assets. It was cleaned out. That's what the word naki means in the pasuk. Ein loy bahem hana shel klum. He doesn't have any benefit from this animal whatsoever. Not only are you not allowed to eat the flesh of the animal, you're also not allowed to get any benefit from it. Says the Gemara, time in the case of Ubal Hashanaki, the fact that the Torah tells you, Ubal Hashanaki, that the owner of the ox is cleaned out from all of his assets, from the pasuk lo yachel, isar achila mashma, isar no lo mashma, it would tell you that you are not allowed to eat from this animal, but who tells you that you're not allowed to benefit from it? You need a specific pasuk to tell you, Ubal Hashanaki, that the owner cannot get any benefit from this animal. Henceforth, seems to be a dead giveaway that the halacha is not like Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Abahu says that every Isra Achila is also an Isra Ana. Why would you need this additional pasuk? Says the Gemara, no, la'olam lo yachel Isra Achila ve'Isra Ana. Rabbi Abahu would tell you no. Lo yachel still teaches me Isra Achila and Isra Ana. Mashma, both of those are implied. Balashar Naki, what does Balashar Naki then come to tell me? Lahanas oirehu da'asa. It comes to tell me that you're not allowed to benefit not just from the meat, that we know already, but you're not allowed to benefit from the leather, from the skins of this animal either. You want to make a nice bag or belt or shoes from the Shar. At the end of the day, it was your ox. Okay, the ox killed somebody, so the ox has to be put to death. And you're not allowed to eat its flesh, and you're not allowed to benefit from its flesh. That's an issue of lo yachel. But what about the leather? Can I not use the leather for something? No, that's a unique din. There is no isur achila of leather. It's not a food. There's an isur hana'ah because of a balashanaki. V'itzrich. And you need this pasuk. I would have said, lo yachel es b'saroksiv. Torah says you are not allowed to eat its flesh, which means that there's an isur achila and isur hana'ah for the flesh. B'saroy in oiroi lai. There's an isur of the basar, there's no isur of the leather. Kamash malan, that both of them are asur. Okay, ulahanach tanai, but according to that opinion within the Tanaim, the mafke elei lahai kra ledrasha achrina, that use this pasuk balashanachi to tell you something else, to tell you lachatzi kofer, to tell you that there is a din of chatzi kofer, of paying a half of the value of the person that has died, meaning, if you have an animal, that goes that goes and kills somebody, that there's a din now of chatzi kofer. If you have there's a difference. Just a little bit of a problem here. There's a difference. The Gemara is in Baba Kama discuss between a shar muad and a shar tam. A shar tam means an animal that doesn't have any background in goring anybody or anything. A shar muad is an animal that does have a background, meaning it has been warned either 2 times or 3 times. Now we know that this is a shar muad. It is an ox that is forewarned to be an ox that is dangerous. So Baal Ashar Naki comes to tell you that there's a din of Chatzi Kofer. Rashi here says, Lahanach tonight, it says Rashi, the Dibber Maseches Lahanach tonight, the Baba Kama, Perik Shoshanagach, Daf Mem Aleph and Mem Beis, the Mafgile Lahai Naki Lidrasha Achrini. They learn the word Baal Ashar Naki tells you a different din. Lashminin the Tam Pater Michatzi Kofer. That a shar tam is pater from paying a chatzi kofer. Doesn't have to pay. A tam usually has to pay chatzi nezek. Has to pay half of the value of the damage that is done. But if the animal gores a person, so if it would be a shar muad, then there would be a value that would be kofer that the owner has to pay. But a shar tam is pater from the owner is pater from chatzi kofer, from paying half of the value of that would usually be charged for killing a person. Dmei vlados, and he doesn't have to pay dmei vlados if the ox were Rachonasan to gore a pregnant woman and cause a miscarriage. Doesn't have to pay. So how does he know the din of hanas ora? Nafkelahu me es b'sarai. So he learns that from es b'sarai. Pasuk says that one is not allowed to eat lo yachel es b'sarai. It doesn't say lo yachel b'sarai. It says es b'sarai. That es is a untranslatable preposition in the Torah. Says the Gemara, and there's a drush on that. Es hatafel b'sarai. That there's something, an es, something that is in addition to, that is secondary to tertiary to the basar. There's a basar, and then there's a something else. And according to the opinion that holds that we are learning this from Baal Ashar Naki, vidach es, what about the es b'sar? Like Darish doesn't think that es is a relevant thing to be Darish. The Tanya, this is a famous Gemara. The Tanya Shimon HaAmsuni. There was a Tanya by the name of Shimon HaAmsuni. And some say Nechemi Hamsuni. He would make a drush on every single S in the Torah. Anytime the Torah says S something, he would learn an additional limit from that. Until he got to the pasuk Es Hashem Lekechatira, that you are supposed to fear something. I mean, you're supposed to fear Hashem. What's the S? How can you fear anything other than Hashem? Pirish. He said, I guess my whole limit of learning the Esim in the Torah doesn't make any sense, because there's nothing that a person should fear other than Hashem Elokecha. How could you add to that? There's nothing that a Jew is ever supposed to fear other than Hashem. They said to him, Rabbi, Kol Esim Shedarash Mata'elahim. Now that you found a hole in your theory, What about all the esem that you made drushes on all of these esem? Amar lahem, he said to them, Kashem shekabati schar ala drisha, the same way that I got schar on learning, kachani mekabel schar ala prisha, so too I will get schar from removing myself, from saying I was wrong, from retracting all of these opinions. Meaning all of the limudim of all of the esem in the Torah, I guess I'm wrong. Now you cannot make a drasha on es, because es Hashem lekecha tira, there's nothing to fear other than Hashem. Ad shebar Rebbe Akiva, and Rebbe Akiva came along with darash, and he made the drasha es Hashem lekecha tira, l'rabis tamid chachamim, that there is also a mitzvah to fear tamid chachamim, that there is also something called meir rabcha, that the mission of us tells us meir rabcha kamer shamayim. The person should fear their Rebbe like they have your shamayim. Says the Gemara. Okay. So that has saved the limit of all of the esem in the Torah. Says the Gemara, challenging Rabbi Abba once again. Vaha Erla. What about Erla? When it comes to the Isra of Erla, the fruit in the first 3 years that a person plants a tree, so the fruit of the first 3 years has an Isra Achila. Says the Pasuk, the Rahman Amma, the Pasuk tells us, Arilim lo yachel, that all of these first fruits, these first 3 years of fruit, lo yachel, one is not allowed to eat. Seems to be that there's a dead giveaway, there's an Isser Achila, and according to Rabbi Abba, there should be an Isser Hana. V'tanya, and the Pasuk, the Brisa tells us, Arilim lo yachel, quoting from the Pasuk, Arilim lo yachel, these first 3 years of fruits, one should not eat. Einli ila Isser Achila minayin shelo yene mimenu. I only know that includes an Isser Achila. How do I know that I'm not allowed to get benefit from it? Shelo yivtza boy, that I'm not allowed to turn it into paint. Shelo v'lo yadlik boy, and I'm not allowed to turn it into fuel. Yadlik boy saner. Talmud Loimer, the pasuk says, "Va'araltem erla sai, arilim lo yachel," and you will make its erla, meaning you're gonna seal off that's the lashon of unusable. You're gonna make it unusable. Arilim lo yachel. The Rabbi says kulam. The lashon of va'araltem erla sai teaches you more than Arilim lo yachel. The Rabbi says kulam and tells you all of these. Time because of Rahman of Araltim Erla say Arilim. Since the pasuk tells you Araltim Erla say Arilim lo yachel. If not for the fact that it says Araltim Erla say, I would have said Isra Achila mashma, Isra Ana lo mashma. That I can learn from this in Isra Achila. I cannot learn from this in Isra Ana. It seems to be a dead giveaway that Rabbi Abba is incorrect. Says the Gemara, no, la'olam lo yachel. The pasuk lo yachel will teach me always. Mashma bein Isra Achila bein Isra Ana. It still teaches me in Isra Achila and Isra Ana. It teaches both of them. Vishani hasan, but this is different. Dichsiv lachem. Pasuk says lachem. Where does the pasuk say lachem? Lo yachel lachem shouldn't be eaten for you. So the fact that the Torah tells you lachem, dichsiv lachem, it says for you, you are not allowed to eat it. And therefore I need the other psukim to tell you. I would have said because of lachem, since it says for you, shelachem yehe. I would have thought that it's still yours. You can still use it for something. Kamash malan. Therefore, you need varaltim or lasai. You need the other psukim to tell you that there's still an isar not. Okay, ve'ela hashte dichsiv hanach krai lachem lamali. Okay, so since it has told you varaltim or lasai, so what does lachem tell you? So Lichtetanya teaches you lachem lerabis anatua. It teaches you that which was planted lerabim, for the public, something that's planted in a public area, something that's planted. If you the area is going to plant some trees on the sidewalk, turning onto Chav Gimel and Aleph to make shade, and there happen to be fruit bearing trees. There's an iser of lachem that there's Rashi tells us lachem. You should see the Rashi. Let's say rabim. It's in the middle of the road for everybody that wants to come by. That the lechem is also going to tell you lechem that there is an iser of arla even there. Rabbi Yehuda tells you lahoitzias anatua l'rabim, that it excludes the natua l'rabim, that there is no iser of that which is planted for the public. And Hashem Yisbarach, to be continued tomorrow. Everybody should have a wonderful day.